Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Andrew Gaffney. I'm Editorial Director with Retail TouchPoints. Really glad you could join us today. We're going to be looking at a really cool topic today called Retail Game Changers. We're going to be talking about 10 brands that are reimagining the shopper experience. Today's webinar is sponsored by Oracle NetSuite. We appreciate them helping you bring this content to our audience today. Quick reminder for our audience, you can go ahead and submit questions. We're going to be covering about 30 minutes of content, and then we'll spend a couple minutes kind of recapping, going through some of the collective trends that we look at, and then if we get questions from the audience, we'll cover those. If we don't get time to go through any questions, feel free to type those in, and we'll try to address them with you one-on-one. There's also a related report available in the Resource Center, and also you can also monitor social media within there. We do encourage you to stay active on social, share some of the cool brand stories we'll be talking about, share some of your comments, and we'll be monitoring those. If you could use the hashtag Retail Game Changers, we'll be sharing and reposting some of that. There's hashtags for our speakers, the handles for our speakers today, if you want to include those. And again, we'd love to hear what you have to say, and we'll be keeping an eye out for that. Again, today's content is brought to you by Retail TouchPoints. If you're not already a subscriber to Retail TouchPoints, I strongly encourage you to join your peers. We've got over 40,000 retail subscribers. We do daily content on our digital website. We do a lot of proprietary content, like special reports, which is borrowed from one of those special reports today that we'll be covering. And also we do a lot of proprietary research. So a lot of great content that we strongly encourage you to go ahead and access. So I'll be joined by Adam Blair, our editor today, and Alicia Esposito, who is a senior content strategist across all of our G3 brands. She's worked in retail for a long time. So two great experts, analysts in the space. Really glad to have them join me today. So with that, Adam, I'm going to turn it over to you to get us started.
Thanks, Andrew. Really appreciate it. So the first retailer we're going to look at today is Beta. They're an interesting retailer because they're really focused on a brand-focused retail-as-a-service business model. This gives them a lot of flexibility. They have their own 17 standalone stores, but they also operate in 70 Lowe's stores, and they power the market at Macy's. Their most recent partnership is with the new iteration of Toys R Us done by True Kids Brands. Their main point of differentiation is that they are set up to provide a lot of data to the brands that are represented in each of their stores, and of course the retailers themselves, about the actual physical shopping experience along these 4 points that are shown on this slide. It really gives a very detailed view of what's actually happening as consumers are considering the product, trying it out, etc. So Beta's also one of those companies, like a lot of retailers, that is operating much more like a technology company than maybe a traditional retailer. Their CEO, Vibhu Norby, had a background that was strictly in technology. He says he had virtually no retail experience when he started the company. I interviewed him a couple of months ago, and he told me that he literally went on Google and typed, "How does a retail store operate?" as he was getting started. He has brought on people who've got a lot more retail experience, and he's obviously gained a lot since then, but that's where he was coming from. They also believe in sharing their technology. They opened up the retail-as-a-service model in 2018, and they acquired Brickwork this year to extend the platform online. So probably the most exciting thing that they're involved in is, and will be definitely worth watching, is what they're going to do with the revamped Toys R Us. They're going to be in 2 locations this coming holiday season in the Garden State Mall in Paramus and a mall in Houston. They're adopting a lot of the recommendations that the people with 2020 hindsight said about the old Toys R Us. They're operating in smaller format stores. They're going to have open boxes so kids can play with the toys and games. And perhaps most important, they're going to be gathering a lot of information for the brands about how these customers interact with the products. So that's obviously going to be useful not just for the 2019 holiday season, but going forward. Next brand we're going to look at is the Groomsman Suit. And they really found a niche in the wedding industry, which, as we all know, is very focused on the bride and her experience. They have a great origin story. One of the co-founders was planning her own wedding, and she was really dismayed to find out what the options were for the men's apparel. A very limited selection, not a great fit experience, and the costs that really would have made it more economical to actually buy the suits at a reasonable price point. So the two founders, Diana Gans and Gene Foley, who both spoke at our most recent Retail Innovation Conference, they did their research and they literally started the company out of one of their apartments. The Groomsman Suit is really a great example of a retailer that is making extensive use of content, primarily through their advice blog. They realized that the groom and the other males in the wedding party may not have the knowledge about apparel and everything that the bride does, and there's not a whole industry providing them with that information they need about how should things fit, how do they tie a bow tie, what accessories should they use, what about their overall look. They're fond of saying the suit is almost the only thing the groom is allowed to touch or have any input on during the wedding planning experience. They've added a lot of things to their website, the Wedding Manager dashboard, which allows couples to manage the party, send reminders to people, and they also have a fit finder, which obviously is very helpful for something that you're not going to actually be there buying it, although they do have some showrooms now. So they're really looking to take the basic concept and expand it. They've already moving into women's apparel, gifts, clothing for younger consumers. They have adapt suits, like for people's proms. They're also aligning themselves with more traditional wedding retailers like David's Bridal. And I believe they're developing a perks program to offer incentives to the wedding planners, who are obviously a big part of this whole process. Next, we move on to Poshmark. Poshmark is really probably the best example of a retailer or a marketplace, I think more accurately a marketplace, that has aligned itself with the social media the way that social media has affected how people interact with each other. That's shown, you can see some of the stats here that by the number of times people open the app and also the total amount of time that they spend on it. I mean, these are figures that any other retailer, any other site would kill for, that people spend, anywhere between 23 to 27 minutes a day on the site. So, Poshmark is really well aware that social networks, like I said, have created a different type of shopper journey. Their CMO, Stephen Tristan Young, said engagement starts with an action, like a comment or a like, that gets the person involved in the conversation. A purchase is not typically the first thing someone does on Poshmark. It's much more about kind of leading people into it. From Poshmark's point of view, though, of course, they're always looking for whatever triggers or information they have that someone is moving towards making a purchase. And since it's also a seller's market, they might also be moving towards selling something. Okay. Again, like Groomsman Suit, they are trying to expand through additional services. They launched something called Posh Remit, which is a local and state sales tax calculator, obviously very helpful for people who it may not be their full business to be a retailer. They've expanded their categories. They went into gifts, and then they're moving into home decor. And also, they're very attuned with technology. They're using augmented reality, and they're applying artificial intelligence with the goal of giving people more confidence about buying apparel online, which, of course, is an issue that tons of retailers have. The amount of returns that are made, particularly in the apparel part of the market, is huge. And more than one consultant has called it the ticking time bomb for retailers. So their goal is to make people feel much more confident about their fit even before they order the product and get it delivered to them. So the last retailer I'm going to talk about is Brilliant Earth. They actually started back in 2005, but they strike me as a company that kind of had to wait for the social atmosphere, the zeitgeist, to catch up with them. It's really only been in the last few years that there's been the momentum gathered around, consumers being very aware of and concerned about the social values that a company represents, and also demanding that they actually do something about it, not just say nice things. Another example might be the REI opt outside, that they actually don't operate on Black Friday and Cyber Monday. They encourage people to go outside, or Patagonia that's put its money where its mouth is in terms of environmentalism. So they really have made the investment in making sure that the gemstones that go into their jewelry are conflict-free. That's not just they're not from combat zones, but that they're mined in places that pay people a living wage and have good working conditions. They use blockchain technology to really be able to track the gemstones back to where they are, so there's traceability. Their packaging is certified by the Forest Stewardship Council, and they donate 5% of their net profits to help build a better future in these mining communities. And on the customer-facing side, again, they are very aware that shopping for jewelry, particularly wedding-related jewelry, has changed. It's not, it's the old cliche was the clueless groom-to-be was, hoping he'd find something that his fiancée would like. And that may still be operative, but now probably it's true that a lot of couples are shopping together and getting each other's viewpoints on things. They allow couples to create joint accounts where they can share thoughts and recommendations. They do a lot of facilitating to get to allow people, their friends and family to put their 2 cents in through social media. They also use a variety of virtual try-on technologies. They have what's called a skin tone slider. So if you're African-American or Hispanic or whatever, if you have a different skin tone, you can see how the actual piece of jewelry is going to look against your skin tone. They use 360-degree videos online for match set virtualization. So what's interesting, I think, about Brilliant Earth is they're linking the online and offline experiences in ways that today's consumers, particularly younger consumers, they're just going to expect that. It's not going to be, oh, this is really exciting. They're just going to be like, of course, the online and offline experiences are connected, and it's part of the whole process. So with that, I am going to turn this over to Andrew.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. Those are great examples. The first one that I'm going to talk about is Eden. We experienced Eden during our Retail Innovation Conference in New York, where we did a store tours at Hudson Yards. For any retailers out there that haven't had a chance to go and experience Hudson Yards, I strongly encourage you to do so. There's a number of innovative store formats in there, and just really the general setup and feel vibe, I think, is much more of experiential than a lot of traditional malls. It's become quite the tourist destination, and really a lot of cool ones, a lot of cool locations there. So Eden is the first one I want to talk about. Most of you are familiar with WeWork and some of the shared workspaces. WeWork is really blowing up. So Eden has introduced a new model that's basically space as a service. So it's a pay-as-you-go space, and it's described as space to make the most of your time between places. So it's the one in Hudson Yards is really aimed at people that want to take a break while they're shopping. So if you're spending the day in a mall and you'd like to get a half hour in between, it's quiet space, really relaxing, really nicely designed. Really very nature inspired theme. So you see a lot of greenery there, very eco conscious from a company and a brand, but also very tech at the core. So one of the things that when you experience Eden, there are people that you interact with, but it's really meant to be very self-service and self-navigated via your mobile device. So it's an app-driven experience. Customers check in on their mobile device. They can pay. They can really control their whole experience and navigate through their time. When they check in on their mobile device, they're give them their key to Eden, and that app would then allow them where they can pay right on the device. It's $6 for every 30 minutes. You can make reservations for different amenities that they have there. The interesting thing about Eden, though, when we heard, their CEO also spoke at our conference, the retail layer, the retail aspect is sort of, almost hidden underneath. So they do have a retail as part of the business where they're selling, pick-me-up snacks, accessories, and services. So while you're there relaxing and in the experience, there's this whole retail model that just sort of almost feels really hidden, but kind of brilliant in its model. They've done some really cool co-branding things. They have Casper nap pods within the experience. So they're also, one of the models is they're actually, part of their revenue is to do some of those branded partnerships. And they're doing some really cool things there with some of the brands and accessories that they're selling and promoting while you're in the experience. And so just a really cool model of sort of, again, not being overt in what you're selling or retail in sort of the classic sense, but doing it in a way that just feels really natural. So what's next? Their CEO, Ben Silver, who I mentioned spoke at our Retail Innovation Conference, told Fast Company that Eden could accommodate about 100 people at a time, he estimated, and he projected that they would host about 3,000 people per day. So pretty sizable audience that they're driving. They've already raised over $2 million in their initial fund, and the goal is to start to expand with new locations in New York City for a start. With 4 more locations and the potential to have as many as 40 just in New York alone. So could really introduce a whole new concept where, what WeWork has done in the workspace could really be brought to retail environments and probably some other interesting locations as well. So definitely one to keep an eye on. Another one that's actually also in Hudson Yards is the Conservatory. One of the things that we write a lot about omni-channel, we've been doing that for years now at Retail TouchPoints, but one of the interesting things that the Conservatory did was they really made the store the first destination point to bring you to online. So sort of the reverse of what a lot of classic brands have done, where they've started with an online experience and then maybe expanded to physical. So the concept was actually introduced by the co-founder of 4510, Brian Bulk. He describes it as a gallery-like concept store, showroom, very heavy on curation with some really cool brands, has a very high-end feel with a real sense of exclusivity. And again, I mentioned that it's really bringing the promise of online shopping to brick and mortar. Their first location was at Hudson Yards, as I touched on. They carry everything from fashion, jewelry, gifts, and really, around the idea of discovering cool new brands and products, curated through over 50 different brand partners. Designed to be a very low stress environment, very high touch and memorable, where the high tech again is invisible. So again, it's a lot more subtle approach than I think we've seen with sort of classic retail. Some of the things that make them innovative, again, I mentioned it's sort of a store-driven engagement point, whereas as opposed, a lot of people are starting on the digital side, they're having people come into the store, and shoppers were designed to speak with an associate first who helps them create their own profile and account. And the idea in the beginning of the model was to order it in store with a consultant and then have it shipped to home. So they didn't have a lot of inventory in the store initially. It was meant to be really a bridge between that physical location and a digital shopping experience. When customers visit the store, they can open an account, and that gives them access to hidden items. So again, that real feel of curation and exclusivity. Their shoppers are invited to try on products, but then most of the orders were done via iPad. Again, very exclusive high-end feel. They have a floral shop within the store. They have a tea room where you're really encouraged to relax, and so it's not the classic, all about shopping kind of environment. So what's next? They've already learned a bunch from when the store opened. According to a recent article in Vogue Business, the company has revamped its model a bit already in response to customers' feedback. They're now making 70% of their products available to take away from the store. So where they're really trying to encourage, buy it, see it in the store, buy it online, have it shipped. They realize there's a bit more urgency of that customer that wants it right away, wants to touch it and walk out of the store with it in the bag. So they're flipping that model a bit. They opened with only 20% of their inventory available. They're moving more to the 70%. So pretty heavy shift. They realized in the article, they talked about Hudson Yards being, again, very, very tourist, becoming a very big tourist stop. So they've added the ability to take foreign credit cards with their checkout platform. They're also adding a courier service for same-day delivery, which, again, a trend that we've covered a lot. So new store, new model, but clearly they're moving quickly to respond to customer demands and trends. Also, the article said purportedly in talks to work with Farfetch to create a physical portal for their stores where they can also use that to introduce new brands and products to their customers. Another one of the interesting brands we wanted to look at was Grove Collaborative. We write a lot about the subscription model, which is clearly one of the fastest growing areas of retail. They've done an interesting hybrid around that subscription model where they allow subscribers, members to customize what they need, and that their products are very much around home essentials, very focused on social consciousness, eco-consciousness. The company rebranded and really started to take off in 2016. Seeing a need around natural home products, seeing some of the explosion of different brands, but offering the ability to introduce it to people and help them, educate them on brands and products and services that they could use in their home. I mentioned that they are very eco-conscious. They're one of the few companies that is certified B, so they meet the standards for businesses that provide social, environmental, and community well-being. So, cool brand from that regard as well. But back to the subscription models, there's some of the things that they do. There's no membership fee. They really make it really flexible, agile for their members. So it's not that, if I'm getting a box every month, do I need it? Members are given the ability to pause their shipments, shop on an as-needed basis. So again, really trying to encourage flexibility, agility, so people can feel comfortable that they're getting introduced to cool new brands without the idea that they may be getting a lot of products that they don't need or want. They have a really interesting approach to shipping. They do shipping at a flat rate of $2.99 per box, regardless of the order size. They really encourage their members and their business model to be really efficient in their packaging and shipping as well, so they can ship as few boxes as possible. Back to sort of their social conscious theme. They do some other cool things on their site. They offer a complimentary 10-minute consultation. Their CEO, who we've interviewed at Retail TouchPoints, talks a lot about the ability to introduce and educate about natural products to their customers. So you can sign up in the beginning and get a consultation where a product specialist will help walk you through what kind of products might be great for you, do some education. They also do offer 15% discount on any recommended products that can come out of those consultations. So what's next? According to an article in TechCrunch, the company's already raised over $100 million. So definitely have driven a lot of interest in terms of their business model. We did an interview with their CEO, Stuart Landsberg, who told RTP that he wouldn't be surprised to see us move to a physical presence within the next 12 to 24 months. So interesting, digital model that's already considering looking at other omni-channel opportunities. So very cool brand. Recommend people check out. They're growing rapidly. And again, really in line with that sort of eco-conscious model. So I think I'm going to turn it over to Alicia. You have a couple of the brands that you're going to look at.
Yep. Thanks so much, Andrew. So far, we've gone through a lot of really interesting companies across different retail categories, target audiences. So I'm excited to kick off my segment with Glossier, which has become a bit of a media darling recently because they really fulfilled a big gap in the beauty industry, in the beauty market. They noticed that there was a big separation between the drugstore brands and then the ones that you would find at, say, a Sephora, more high-end luxury. And the founder, Emily Weiss, she actually started fashion, in publications like Vogue, and she eventually founded Into the Gloss, which was actually a content-focused website and really focusing on her experiences, her connections in the industry. And it's been really fascinating to see how the entire business model and the community surrounding it has evolved. And people are noticing, especially consumers, and that's what has really lent itself to the brand's significant growth and interest within the VC community. We all know, we've seen the headlines that Glossier is one of the very few female-run organizations that has reached unicorn status. And I think a lot of that has to do with the company's dedication to building and fostering that community. You'll see on the screen here, not only the impressive funding numbers, but just the sheer volume of repeat visitors that this brand gets. Another really fascinating number is that I think it was in 2018, about 70% of their customer acquisitions derived from word of mouth. And Emily Weiss, the founder, really attributed that to the company's social presence and their really extensive focus on developing unique and compelling content for all of those channels. So to dig a little bit deeper into that, I would say that Instagram is the key channel for them, especially with the emergence of Instagram stories, Instagram TV. They use it to show, before and afters, ways to use the products, but also as a really powerful feedback channel. You see them commenting, asking questions across social channels, and they even actually have a Slack community, which a lot of people know about Slack as a work and collaboration tool, but they do have these little specialty communities that serve as hubs. And the Glossier team uses this as a way to reach out to their community and say, hey, we want to hear from you. We're thinking about developing these products. What do you think? Or what can we do better? And more and more consumers are looking to not only feel like they're heard, but that their insight is being applied. And then to go a little bit deeper into this content conversation, because, we hear a lot about, product images, product descriptions, but, Emily Weiss really, because she focused and specialized in editorial content in the early stages of her career with Into the Gloss, she really wanted to make this a focal point of the brand community experience. And I think that's really, present if you just go to the website. On the screen here is an example of, one of the content-focused sections of the e-commerce site experience. It's not just about pushing the product and why it's so great. It's let's show you shoppers other products in their everyday life. And I think that's also, a really big driver of the brand success, that, they understand the increased importance of inclusivity in the beauty world. For so long, luxury and beauty has been all about exclusivity. Look how great we are, look how beautiful we are. They're showing people in their everyday lives. They're showing, the products that are staples in their morning routines. They're showing how, everyday people are having fun with their makeup. It's a bit more accessible, also affordable. So it seems to be appealing to this largely underserved community. And then, of course, we're talking about the convergence of digital and brick and mortar, and Glossier has done a really stellar job of extending this community into their brick and mortar stores. And right now they only have 2 in California and New York City. But of course, they have a lot of pop-up shops. I believe they have one in, Washington right now. And as you can see, the store experience is very clean, also has a lot of natural elements. I know Andrew mentioned that about Eden, but it's almost like you're walking through a museum or an art exhibit rather than a store where they're just stacking all the products on the shelves. They really let their in-store associates or in-store experts guide the conversation, really ask pointed questions, and let the passion for the brand that they have, the passion for the product, shine through and guide those experiences. And they're also evolving into a lifestyle brand, which they kind of already are, between the beauty and the content and skincare. But now they're going into fashion. They have a very small line that is getting a lot of interest across social media. So it'll be very interesting to see how that whole space evolves for them, especially because they have such a cult-like following. And they're really laser focused on international growth, which on Retail TouchPoints we've been discussing a lot more, especially the need to create these highly tailored and immersive experiences in a scalable way as you expand. So that'll be interesting to see how they do that. And if they're still in the menu for them, they've been extremely successful. So it'll be interesting to see what new concepts emerge from them. And then since sustainability and, eco-conscious brands have come up a few times already, I wanted to share, one of the brands that I've been keeping a close eye on. We interviewed them, I think, back in their early days, back in 2013, a New Jersey-based company, which is always great to see, Boll and Branch. And they really pride themselves at being a cross-section of luxury and sustainability for, I would say, a product category that people are really focused on, and that's sheets, towels, any household linens, right? You don't really think, oh, I really need like a good high-quality towel. When you think of luxury, it's more like footwear, apparel, jewelry, things like that. So they're really bringing that conversation up into the forefront. And I think a lot of that has to do with their focus on sustainability, being eco-conscious, and really focusing on okay, we're giving you these great products at a reasonable price because we're selling directly to you, but there are a lot of deeper implications, a lot of deeper issues that we're addressing. And, that's really present when you just go to their website, right? This is an image, on their About Us copy. They really let the mission do the talking to show that they're kind of walking the walk and talking the talk, which is always great to see. And not only are they focused on that quality craftsmanship, but they're focused on the ethical treatment of the people doing the work. So it's kind of like a value loop of sorts between the cotton farmers, the factory workers who are actually creating the products, and then, of course, the consumers, right? I would say across all generations, although millennials and Gen Zers are kind of driving this shift, I would say. They all want to know, what the brands are doing to get the products to our door. And there have been a lot of conversations around factory conditions, the impacts of fast fashion and the like. So Boll and Branch are really going all in on this mission and really making it transparent for anyone that goes to their website. And like I noted earlier, they note that because it's a direct-to-consumer model, it kind of eliminates the middleman cost that comes with building those retail partnerships and selling them in different stores. And they're also able to trace back the origin of the cotton, which is an example of one of the labels that you'll see on their products. So not only is it, sustainable from a worker condition standpoint, but, it's end-to-end supply chain. You get to see every step of the process all the way to where the cotton came from. And then they add additional confidence to the buying process. Of course, going to the store, you can kind of touch the sheet, you can touch the towel, determine if the value or the quality matches the price point. So they offer free returns on all online purchases, which kind of takes the guesswork out of that process. And, they're always trying to leverage happy customer feedback across all channels. They use a lot of user-generated content on social media as well, which is always, that's testament to the mission, right? Seeing, a newborn baby, with the sheets in their crib, or, a new bedroom design. They kind of show, what that ultimate experience is like for the customer. And as of now, they don't have any other stores other than a flagship location in Short Hills, New Jersey, and that's of course where they're based. And they take a similar consultative approach to a lot of the other brands that we've talked about already. They're called sleep stylists, and they also extend the brand experience through in-store workshops and events. There have been a lot of conversations around the culture of sleep and why it's so important, how it creates that trickle effect in our lives. And they're really, going all in on that concept, I think, in their store. And as of now, I don't think there are any other plans to open other stores. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. And then finally, before we can get into some conversation and some questions, Batch, which is a very interesting concept because they don't really go all in on the selling story, right? Unique, cool, one-of-a-kind products. It's more about the experience of going to the Batch location, which as of now, we were able to visit their New York City location at Hudson Yards. Like Andrew said, we encourage you all to go check all of these stores out because they really are a sight to see. It's interesting to see how the vision of the brand kind of unfolds in the store. But essentially what Batch is at its core, and they use similar language on their website, is, it's like you're visiting your cool friend's house, right? You're kind of walking around, you're like, oh, what's this? Oh, this is fun, this is quirky, and you get kind of lost in that experience. And they let the products do the talking. It's not so much, doing the merchandise displays a certain way. It's really about the discovery process, and the curation is a big part of that. So what they do is they rotate products, 6 times a year, which is a pretty hardy, cycle. And that kind of allows them to integrate different brands, of all sizes, and also different categories as well. But really the goal at the end of the day is to spotlight those smaller up-and-coming brands that are showing these and creating these really cool and innovative products. And then, again, like a few of the other brands that we've spotlighted thus far, they're really big on using events to enrich that brand experience, kind of turn the one person browsing journey into something more community driven. So their events offerings and their events calendar is a pretty prominent part of their site experience. So people can see what events are happening at their local bat shop. But it's also an opportunity for brands to learn about how they can get their products in front of customers, whether it's through trunk shows or through classes. They're really going all in on this concept of creating a community within their batch environment, so to speak. So I know we covered a lot of different companies in a very short amount of time, and they're all doing some really great things. But as we were putting this content together, kind of reviewing everything, there were five key lessons or 5 key takeaways that kind of rose to the top for us. And I think the first one is all of these brands really focus on, a customer need or, a customer pain point. Going to the Groomsman Suit, grooms are kind of left out of the planning experience, and, brides want to make the process easier for them, so they're fulfilling a need in that way. In the context of beta, the brands renting out their space want more insight into how consumers are interacting with their products, which is really valuable from a marketing perspective. So really, I think across the board, and we can dig a little bit deeper into these, is that, they're really putting not only the basic customer data points, their age, whether they're male or female, their location, they're really digging deep into their beliefs, their, behaviors, the channels they use to not only get information, but to communicate with people. So there's a lot of really rich insight to guide these experiences. And of course, there's the application of these insights across all channels. How does it scale to digital? How does it scale to pop-ups or, full-on brick and mortar strategies? And how can we use technology to further enrich this experience, whether they support services, whether they support, customization, whether they support, making sure they're making the right decisions, right? Brilliant Earth, I thought, was a great example of a digital tools to, add ease and convenience to that online shopping experience based on your style preferences, the size of your hand, the shape of your hand. There are a lot of those little touches that have such a profound impact on the shopping experience that, again, really stems to that customer need. So I think this is a conversation we can go on and on for, but Adam, Andrew, I'd love for you to fill in on some of these lessons, what really rose to the top for you, and then hopefully we can dig into some more examples.
Yeah, Adam, I'll let you go first, and then I'll see if I have any to add.
I would certainly agree with what Alicia identified. Putting the customer at the center. And I think it's also interesting that we're dealing with companies that have, a lot of them started as just pure plays, and they've just ventured into the physical world. It's the reverse of what traditionally has been the route for retailers. And I think that maybe has helped them have more of a focus on the customer. When they've had to attract every customer to a website or to one single store, that really it forces them to have that focus. I think the other thing that, and you don't necessarily have to be a pure play to have this type of mentality, these retailers seem to have a real willingness to try things. The Groomsman Suit's a good example. They're a relatively young company, and they're already sort of trying a bunch of new things, going into new product categories, testing new technology. Beta, as I said, is super flexible. Batch with their commitment to changing over multiple times per year. I hate the cliche of fail fast, but it kind of is the operative phrase here. That they're really willing, that conservatism, not political conservatism, but that conservatism of, things are going okay, we don't need to try anything. I really think it's gone 180 degrees from that in retail, especially among the game changers. So that's sort of my overall gloss on that.
Yeah, I would just add a couple of quick points. I think it came up in a few areas where I think most of these are really the antithesis of the 80s, 90s, whatever decade you want to point to, that really brought up sort of the warehouse kind of feel of retail and stack 'em high. I think it's a lot more subtlety, where it's about the experience, it's about sort of discovering products and feeling some level of exclusivity and really having a brand and product story. I think the other part that came up a few times is social consciousness. I think both the majority of these brands clearly stand for something beyond just selling product and making money, which is obviously the core of what retail is about. But I think that's an interesting trend that came out of all of them. So thanks, Alicia and Adam, for sharing those great examples. We've got a couple of good questions that have come in. I want to spend a few minutes going through some of those. Terry had asked if we thought these brands budgeted more or spent more in technology, or just made technology more of a priority in their strategies. I'll let either one of you jump on that first.
It's a tough question to answer. Again, traditional retailers, I think a lot of their technology spend was behind the scenes. It was the ERP and the merchandising engine and the inventory management. I think with a lot of these brands, the technology is a lot more visible and it's a lot more customer facing. It's one of the reasons we focus on that at RTP. But I think undoubtedly there's more being spent on technology, just because there's simply more technology that applies to retail. We didn't even really cover artificial intelligence except glancingly, but that's going to be huge. Voice shopping and the use of conversational commerce. Some retailer is going to crack that code very soon, and that's going to be an area where there's going to need to be a lot of technology investment. So I would say undoubtedly there's more being spent on technology kind of as a whole.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think I would add to that. Yeah, I think Adam made a lot of really great points, but I think, especially for the brands that I went through, I think they were looking at technology and continue to look at technology through a more strategic lens. I think sometimes what happens when we hear about all of these cool, tech tools, like Adam talked about, AR and VR, the best use cases are the ones that, again, serve a very pointed customer need, and they add value when we're looking at that end-to-end customer journey. Like Lowe's is a good example of how they use, that kind of technology to, make the redesign process for our kitchen easier. So I would say that although they are investing more in those customer-facing touch points of the customer experience, they're thinking about ways to use technology in a really fun and innovative way. It still enriches the experience in a way that matters, right? It's not just technology for technology's sake. And I think that sometimes, we're all in the rat race, right? We're all in the race to kind of do the cool latest things to get the headlines. But really asking that question, pausing and asking that question up front is really critical.
Yeah, I would just kind of put a bow on everything you guys said. I think to Adam's point, where when I wrote about ERP a couple of decades ago, it was when retailers had reached a certain point of scale. They had a couple hundred stores, and the business got so complex that they felt like they needed a system. I feel like technology is really at the core for a lot of these brands. They really start and build around that. Adam talked about that with Beta, where they're really more of a technology company than a retailer. And I think when you look at how important data is, a lot of times in our examples, we talked about customer profiles and knowing the customer and really, having a lot of intelligence about the customer and baking that into the offering. That's going to start a lot with data. So I think a lot of these companies where ERP might have been something that came up after the fact, after you got to a certain point of complexity, I think a lot of these brands are starting with the idea that we're going to be, excellent at data. We're going to be best in class at data, and are starting with the systems and technologies that can help drive that. So great question, great thoughts from you there. We had a question from Jill. She said, a couple of examples we brought up were around social consciousness. She was asking if we think that's going to be, sort of a must for retail brands going forward, that they're going to be more clear and communicative about their social causes and programs. Alicia, you want to try that first, then I'll get Adam's perspective?
Yeah, and I think I kind of mentioned this at a high level, but I do think, we're looking more to brands to share what their purpose is, and not just in their level of service or their quality of product. It's what is the deeper, more meaningful value that you're serving, not only to me as a person, but also to our greater world and our greater culture. I will say, though, that although it is going to become more imperative that organizations do stand for something, it's not so much of a marketing risk now to speak up about social issues and injustices and, even environmental causes. I think it's becoming more of a must-have than a risk for brands. The note of caution, though, is the need to be authentic about it. You hop on the bandwagon, do the social post, do the rainbow, merchandise, really go all out, which is fantastic because, it's kind of raising awareness, and it's, forging that idea of community and belonging, which is very important. But more and more consumers are responding to those announcements and those email campaigns and marketing campaigns. This is great, but how are you giving to the cause? What are you doing beyond this to show that this matters to your brand and that it matters to your culture? So I would say make sure that there is depth and authenticity and value to everything that you do. And if you do plan to capitalize on something like that, I use the term capitalize loosely, make sure that there's a deeper layer of charitable giving or raising awareness to make it seem and to prove that it's a bit more meaningful than just, an opportunity to hop on the latest, event or, big initiative. Yeah. Adam, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Oh, I definitely agree with that. And even beyond that, I think we reported on Wayfair's employees doing a one-day walkout because I believe they found that Wayfair was supplying furniture to some of the camps along the southern border. And they had a real objection to this. And they were really, according to what the employees wrote, they were really just looking for some sort of a process where there could be an internal process to decide this. And I guess the cautionary tale to pick up on what you said, Alicia, is this is not something you just put on like a hat and then take off. It's got to be, you have to sort of look at your own house and make sure, are you using suppliers that are, paying people a living wage? And that can go, the supply chain, as we know, can go way, way far back or be overseas. It typically is. Not that, you have to be an absolute model corporate citizen, but taking a stand and proclaiming it is going to open you up to a higher level of scrutiny than if you just sort of lie low. So it's a bit of doing the due diligence and doing your homework and making sure you can withstand that extra level of scrutiny. But I think it is going to continue to be more important for people and companies.
All right, awesome. I want to ask you guys to take one more question, and then we'll wrap up. Question from Warren. He said he thought it was interesting that, given all the talk around the retail apocalypse, that a lot of these new brands still focus on the physical store presence, and is asking our take on that about what it means to sort of physical retail world. Adam, any thoughts from you on that?
Yeah, I mean, we really, even when we were following the bandwagon and writing about the retail apocalypse, we very quickly saw that this was, it was serious for a lot of companies, and certainly a lot of companies have struggled. The physical store is by no means outmoded. And what we're seeing with a lot of these game changers, as people have been pointing out, is the rebirth of the renaissance of the physical store. I think what is happening, though, maybe Toys R Us is a good example. It's probably not going to be those big warehouse box-like stores anymore, except for a few companies that can really do it at scale, the Walmarts and the Costcos and the BJ's Wholesale Clubs and the Best Buys and Targets of the world. Toys R Us probably should have downsized and done something like their successor company is doing now, having these smaller format stores that really allow people to have an interesting and a positive experience at the store. There's so much, I don't know who said it, but the people who say the competition is not the other stores. My competition is everything else that people can do, watch TV or watch Netflix or go to an event or something. So I don't think the retail apocalypse, I wouldn't say it wasn't real, but it was certainly overblown. And I think hopefully retail can be on the upward trend that it seems to be on.
Awesome. Any thoughts from you, Alicia, on that?
Yeah, I think Adam really hit all of the key points, but I think it's important that we think about the juxtaposition between the store closures and these cases, right? All of these cool brands that are actually putting their money into brick and mortar. It'll be interesting to see if there's actually any hard data around the closures versus the openings and see how that ratio pans out. But I think really the key thing that it extends across all of these examples, ones that started in digital and ended up in physical, is that, they had a very core brand story and core brand mission, and they used digital channels to begin to cultivate their communities, right? Build that excitement and, awareness around the brand. And they're using the physical store as an extension of that community, as a way for like-minded people to come together, whether that's through, events, whether that's through workshops or, product demonstrations. They're using the physical store as that added layer to this brand experience. They're not two separate entities, right? They coexist together, they fuel each other, they support each other. And I think that's really the key thing that all retailers listening to this today or tomorrow that can kind of take from this. It's how does this entire ecosystem of channels and tactics, how do they all fuel and support each other? And that includes your people too, in your stores. I think Glossier is a really great example of that. They have people who love their brand working for them, and they are not only, spreading their passion for the brand, but also, educating their visitors. So they're making the best decisions as well. So I would say, they're kind of using that digital, the digital community and the digital insight that they're getting about their customer to fuel and improve that in-store experience. So I think that's really the key nuance there.
Awesome. All right. I want to thank Adam and Alicia for sharing these great examples with us and their insights. I want to thank everybody for making time. I also want to thank Oracle NetSuite for helping us bring this great content to you. That's going to conclude today's presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any other questions, comments, apologies if we didn't get to your questions today. We will definitely follow up with you. And today's session has been recorded. You'll get a link to go back and review it or share it with your peers. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.